This video is sponsored by Noragon, the commercial vehicle data experts. Visit noragon.com to learn more.
As we sit at the beginning of a new year, truck technology looms large. Where will it go in 2025? To answer that question, I'm joined on this episode of On the Road by Rishi Mehra, Vice President at Trimble. He believes these will be the 5 trends to watch in 2025. Technology innovation and platform connectivity, autonomous vehicles, data analytics and AI, nearshoring and Mexico cross-border freight, and severe weather-related supply chain disruptions. For more details on each of those, let's go to the interview. Okay, so on today's episode of On the Road, I am joined by Rishi Mehra of Trimble. He's the Vice President with the Transportation segment at Trimble. Rishi, how are you?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Doing great. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
So today we're going to talk about, it is the new year, as we said, and we're going to talk about some trends that you guys see coming up for 2025. So when we talked to you, mentioned 5 trends that you wanted to cover, and we're just going to kind of take them one by one. You can kind of give me your thoughts on each. So
that works.
Okay. So first up, we've got technology innovation and platform connectivity. So what do you see happening there in 2025?
I think before we get into what we are seeing in 2025, you have to look back into what has happened in 23 and 24 when we came back from the COVID boom in the freight economy to the current state. What ended up happening is that has pushed a lot of the carriers and the shippers to start thinking about, in this environment of recession, how do we streamline our operations? How do we automate manual tasks? Then on top of that, you layer all the buzzwords around AI that's been coming around, and that brings a completely different landscape for us to tackle. But both shippers, carriers are invested in and very much interested in technology providers such as us to provide them the solutions. And all of this cannot happen truly without an ecosystem, a platform where you connect all the different pieces of the freight movement, right from the bid process down to the settlement.
You mentioned AI and all the buzzwords, all the talk about that. We will get back to that. That's a couple topics from now. But next I wanted to talk about autonomous vehicles. That was here on the road, we named that one of our trends of the year for 2024, and specifically talked about the push towards getting the trucks on the roads and getting them, tested real world miles. So where are your thoughts on that as we head into 2025?
I think there's been significant investment that has made technology has advanced on autonomous vehicles, especially in the middle mile space and to a certain extent within yard movements. So the developments are definitely exciting. We are following that. It would be interesting to see how the regulations, both at the state and the federal level, come around this. We feel there's a market for this. We feel there is the use of autonomous vehicles, especially on the lanes in which they have been testing, whether it's the Texas lanes, whether it's Phoenix, Texas, or the other areas where they've made the runs for this. Those would be the ones to start seeing actual live use. The big thing is, how are the regulations going to come around? How are we going to know whether these will be completely autonomous vehicles, or these would be ones where you still need a driver in the seat, but the driver is not going to be working or doesn't have to have the full attention on the road? How does a driver in the seat not driving, how do their hours come into play? Safety becomes a big aspect on the autonomous vehicle side, but there are shippers who are requesting carriers to invest in it. There are carriers who have started putting the money behind this. It's an expensive investment, but once the investment pays fruit, I think we'll see huge returns in this. I don't know if we can say we would be in a landscape in 2020 by the end of 2025 where we're going to have a significant percentage of the lanes being run using the autonomous vehicles, but it will be much more than what we have seen in 2024.
Yeah, definitely. Those are ramping up. I know a lot of the manufacturers have kind of targeted 2027 as their kind of target date?
For the mainstream, definitely that is the piece. And Trimble's talking to a lot of them, not directly within the transportation space. From a transportation segment within Trimble, we do offer our map data, we do offer our PC miler routing for use so that the autonomous vehicles have the correct path, which are still legal and truck safe for traversing in these lanes. But Trimble also has its advanced positioning systems. It has its sensors, which are used by these autonomous trucking companies to try to use those with the right, keeping the truck on the road, keeping it guided in between the lane markings, ensuring safety not only of the goods that they are carrying, but all the other vehicular traffic that's on the road out there.
Yeah, definitely all very important. And like you were saying before, the regulations are going to be currently one of the big question marks. What we have is, what will that look like? Is it going to be different state to state, or how all that will shake out? And I think we'll start to get a better idea once the trucks are more frequently on the road, and regulators see it as something that they'll need to, have something out about sooner rather than later.
Definitely.
All right, so we can move on to trend number 3, which is data analytics and AI. And this is a pretty broad one. There's a lot of things that kind of fall under this umbrella. So what specifically were you thinking about highlighting here?
I think I go back to the first topic that we covered in this, from a technology innovation and platform connectivity. Carriers and shippers, everyone's starting to be more interested in seeing, what can you do with this data? How do we analyze this data? Can we identify trends in this data? Can we query this data for insights that would help us make our operations more efficient? Can it help us improve productivity? Can we really use this data to understand driver behavior? Can we use this data to better plan? Can we put the data to use from a perspective of identifying more profitable lanes for our carriers, help them better match to freight to reduce their empty miles on the return hauls? So a lot of effort is being put by Trimble around data analytics, but it is not just analytics for the sake of it. Our focus is always on providing value from the data that is going through our ecosystem, where we're able to provide actionable insights to our fleets, to our shippers, because that is what is the most important thing. We've been embarking on this over the last few years. We started with our Places project, where we codified all the different commercial locations in North America. And as we started getting GPS telemetry data from the use of our navigation system, from our partnerships with telematics providers, we are able to offer actionable insights, analytics on where the driver is stopping. How long is the driver stopping for? Is it impacting the shipper's operations? So that is where we are investing our resources in. And then when you add in AI on top of it, it will drastically change how the industries work. And transportation hopefully takes the lead in this and is able to take the operations and improve the productivity. Because one thing we know, if we are able to make a very small incremental gain in efficiency and productivity in the freight movement, it yields significant benefits for our carriers, for our shippers, and I think in the end will flow down to the consumers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Very important to keep track of these sort of things, kind of keep that efficiency as high as possible for the fleet, the bottom line. I did want to ask you, you mentioned AI, adding on top of this. That's one of those terms, you mentioned it before, it's kind of become a buzzword. A lot of people using it, not always a clear and one definition of it. So when it comes to transportation, what kind of role does AI play?
So it is, and you can think of AI, of course, ChatGPT has given a new meaning to AI, but inside Trimble, we look at it as natural language interaction. That is step one. That's a very basic thing. People asking questions in conversational terms around the data that is sitting in the system. We take that as one of our application use cases, but more importantly, we use AI for freight matching. We use AI where you don't need, in our autonomous procurement and autonomous quotation tools, where you really don't need people in the middle to have freight bid upon and accepted and transacted and the load movement starting. Those are the places where Trimble's investing in. That's where you bring about the efficiency. running AI models on the data to understand profitability of lanes, to understand where you would create an order imbalance or a network imbalance by picking up orders in certain areas. Those things are where we're using these algorithms to identify trends and offer the insight so that when a CSR is looking at accepting an order, even before they accept it, the model runs to let them know whether this would be a profitable order or not, whether it would create a network imbalance, whether it would leave the driver in a place where they might not be able to bring the load back. So those are the places where, when we talk about AI at Trimble, that's where our investment is being made to return the value, to bring huge gains to the productivity, to the efficiency, so that represent reps are not just picking up any order that comes their way because they need to move freight. They're picking profitable orders. They automated systems can transact on behalf of individuals and accept the most easy ones so that you don't have to put human power behind it.
Yeah, and thanks for those details and going into that definition there. I think since ChatGPT came around, the definition of the term AI has changed for a lot of people. But a lot of what you're talking about isn't new.
That is true. These are machine learning models that Trimble has been working on over years. ChatGPT has just put a different spin on it.
Yeah. So we'll go on to the fourth term, and this is a little bit more of a quick hit. But you mentioned nearshoring and cross-border freight going to and from Mexico.
Oh, this is an interesting one. US carriers always have had operations across the border at Mexico, but it wasn't much movement actually going in across the border. It would be drop-off points. We are seeing an increase out there, definitely in 2023, and we don't have the final 24 numbers, but Mexico did surpass China as the leading importer into the US. Construction at the border is increasing, but the nearshoring thing is an interesting one which we should look at, because as the concept of nearshoring comes about, it will have dual impact. One would be immediate imports increasing exponentially before any regulatory laws come into effect, which might impact the import process. But then manufacturing should get a boost, whether it is within the North American continent, even if you consider it happening in Mexico, which would have a net positive impact on the freight movement, especially using transportation over the road haul, whether it is inside the US, cross-border from Mexico to the US, or even from Canada.
Yeah, it's definitely been an increasing trend, and it's hard to say sitting here in early January how a lot of those regulations and laws will shake out. So we just kind of have to see.
This is a story that will play out over 2025 and beyond.
Definitely. All right, so we have one more trend to get to, and it's one of those you hope you don't see, but it kind of is inevitable, and that's severe weather-related disruptions to the supply chain. So I was wondering how come you saw that as a 2025 specific trend?
There have been many more catastrophic weather-related events. I don't think we would have ever imagined hurricane impacting inland North Carolina the way it did in the past year. It completely shut down the transit in Asheville. Those are the things that are taking a much more heavier toll on an already weakened freight economy. It is disrupting businesses, it is disrupting consumer activity. I think you have to route around those weather events, you have to plan around those weather events. Safety is paramount. We've seen the number of nuclear verdicts that have come around based on even a minor weather event, even without the driver being at complete fault. Those are the things that Trimble helps protect against. That's a trend that we are seeing increasing, where a lot more carriers are investing in weather alerting, in weather-based solutions. In response to that, Trimble had worked over the last year, and we've launched our hyper-local weather solution in partnership with Weather Optics, where we can alert the driver as they're driving. But we go beyond that, where besides telling the driver that the roads might be slippery or a heavy snowstorm might impact them on their trip, we're making a conscious effort to integrate it with the other parts of the ecosystem. When we talk about putting it inside the TMS so that the planner knows what the weather impact could be. We have models that are able to predict over 72 to 96 hours, and some days we even go 7 days out to accurately tell you what would be the impact and the risk score on freight moving from point A to point B.
Yeah, and like you said, a lot of this you can't really see coming from too far away. Like you mentioned what happened with Asheville, something that nobody saw coming last year. But yeah, the more information you have sooner, the better. So yeah, definitely important to for any carrier to keep their eyes on. All right, so I think that is all 5 of the trends we wanted to get to today. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, Rishi.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's a pleasure always talking with you all.